does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big bang. Wherever there's a hang, you'll find the Spider-Man.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone, and joining me I have Steve Vavona. Say hi, Steve.
Hey, Carlos.
Well, today we are going to try to examine and dive a little deeper into what are the ramifications of this whole news we've been hearing for the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, that Marvel somehow made a deal with Sony to be able to, I guess, borrow Spider-Man or use him. What exactly is...
That's a good way to put it. I would say borrow is a appropriate term.
Why don't you explain to our listeners, first of all, why is this a big deal in terms of, if Spider-Man is already a Marvel character, why is it a big deal that Marvel gets the rights?
Right.
You know, how does that work?
I mean, we have to go a little back in time.
Yeah.
We've touched upon in prior shows how in the sort of dark days in the 90s that Marvel, or even farther back than that in the 80s, that Marvel sort of was in financial difficulty, and they sold the rights to their characters for peanuts to all these different outfits, in the hopes that maybe some movies would get made, and they were really not reaping huge benefits from this, but they needed money, and they actually sold the rights to Spider-Man to Canon Films, one of my favorite schlock purveyors of the 80s, Spider-Man and Captain America. And I remember I worked in a library in the late 80s when I was in high school, and we used to get Variety. And in Variety, Canon used to take out all these ads for all these movies. I'd say like 75% of them never got made. And I remember seeing an ad, like a one sheet for Spider-Man, and he looked like he did in like the Electric Company. And I was like, oh, Jesus. But I was still excited. Anything, as we talked about in prior shows, anything would have made me happy just to see them up on the screen. Then over the years, there was this just nightmare of rights entanglements between different studios. We also know very well from our college days that there was a brief period where James Cameron was supposed to direct a Spider-Man film, had written a treatment. There was talk Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to play Dr. Octopus and all this other stuff. And then that died. And then for, I'd say like almost another 10 years, close to 10 years, there were just all these legal battles between different studios and rights holders and who had a chunk of what, film, TV, this, that finally got wrapped up, and Sony was able to come away with all the rights to do a Spider-Man film. Now, this is sort of a kind of a sequel to our discussion of the, early crappy superhero stuff that was coming out at the time. Now, we had already seen and touched upon Blade and X-Men coming out in 98 and 2000.
Right.
Well, the next big one after X-Men was going to be Spider-Man. And there was a lot of buzz around this project, and there was a real sense that it was going to be just as good as X-Men, if not better. Sam Raimi was going to direct it. They had A-list talent. They cast Tobey Maguire, who was pretty hot at the time. Yeah. Kirsten Dunst, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, and James Franco as Harry Osborn. And, there was an incredible buzz around this film. And when it came out, it hit big, monstrous. It hit like Iron Man level big.
Yes.
Whereas, X-Men did not do as well as Spider-Man. And no superhero film did as well as Spider-Man really until probably, The Dark Knight or Iron Man. But, for the Sony's first trilogy was hugely successful. And then it was, as these movies started to come out year after year after year, we started to understand that Marvel had basically farmed out the rights to their most popular characters to different studios, and these deals were years and years old. But now that these movies were, becoming huge hits, that they were all, Spider-Man, you had Daredevil, you had Hulk, you had Fantastic Four, you had X-Men, and these were all being produced at Fox, at Sony, different studios.
Right.
And Marvel, Universal even, but Marvel had bupkis. They had, the B-list.
Right. But at the same time, while they're holding these properties, they're trying to beat the clock because they're under a time constraint.
Right. They have to keep films in production. Let's just say, for argument's sake, every 2 to 3 years, Fox has to do an X-Men film. Sony has to do a Spider-Man film, or the rights go back to Marvel. And Marvel now, once these other characters and they're hitting big, Marvel decides to take the plunge and create their own studio and produce their own films with the characters that they still have the rights to.
Right, and they're not necessarily A-listers.
Well, yeah, I mean, as the general public does not know them as well as sort of the geeks know them. Mm-hmm. And, people would maybe know Iron Man. If there was an animated series, then there was more of a chance that the public knew who these characters were. But other than that, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, again, they just didn't have the
Superman, Batman appeal.
Right. The recognition that these other characters had. But lo and behold, Marvel hits big with these characters. Iron Man is huge. Captain America and Thor, not as huge, but very successful, leading into Avengers, which is ginormous, a huge hit. Marvel is now on the top of the heap.
Right.
And at this point in the game, Sony is rebooting Spider-Man because the Raimi films are over. They don't want to do a fourth film, which I was very upset about. I wanted Raimi to, Spider-Man 3 was weak, but I still would have taken another Raimi film over what we got.
What's important also to note is that it's not that Marvel became the better of the superhero film companies. Marvel took the superhero film genre and made it a legitimate genre. It's not like it's something off to the side that people can say, especially money people can say, oh, that's just for those geeky kids, fan kids. No, they're seeing serious mega bucks here.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, just like, when you have a slate of films that's coming out of a studio in the year, you have X amount of dramas and X amount of action films. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, where's my superhero film? That's a genre that now has to be filled, and Marvel leads, basically.
Yeah, and once it becomes viable and successful and profitable, everybody wants to do it.
Yep.
And Sony is realizing that, well, they had a great run with the Raimi films, but now, well, okay, we're going to have to start from scratch because we still have to keep doing these movies. So we're going to, and this is, sort of kind of a dreaded word in a lot of circles. We're going to have to do a reboot.
Reboot.
And
what's worse, reboot or reimagine? We had shows about this.
Oh, I don't know. I think, well, in the case of Spider-Man, I'm not alone in this feeling, severely disappointed with what we got. Now, they chose a new director, a new star, all new cast. They went, into different aspects of Spider-Man's mythology. But I think the huge mistake that they made right off the bat was just retelling the origin.
Yeah.
Whereas, even though it wasn't a huge hit, I think Marvel had the right idea when they got the rights back to the Hulk from Universal. Mm-hmm. It was not a reboot. It was sort of like a soft sequel to the first one. That doesn't really acknowledge the first one, but he's already the Hulk.
Yeah.
We're not going into all
you might get a little flashback
stuff
here or there, but you're not going to spend a third of the film reliving that.
Setting up this character.
Yeah.
And so we went the whole backstory way with Peter Parker again.
Yeah.
They chose Andrew Garfield, who I thought came off like this snotty, petulant little skater kid who I wanted to slap. And
How do you really feel about him?
Well, I'm going to tell you. I didn't like his Peter. I've said this before. I did not like his Peter Parker one bit. I thought his Spider-Man was decent. I could deal with him as Spider-Man, but when he was Peter, I wanted to punch him. It was a bloated sort of all over the, yes, they used a different villain, which was a smart move. Raimi was probably going to get to the lizard at some point. He was setting him up.
Yeah, they were setting him up.
Yeah, but they never got to it. The guy who played him was good. Rhys Ifans, I liked him a lot. He was probably one of the better aspects of the movie for me. But again, we're going throughout the whole origin again, and it's Aunt May and Uncle Ben again, and this time they're using Gwen Stacy instead of Mary Jane, which made sense. I understood that, and Emma Stone was pretty good, but it just didn't work, and it was fairly successful. Like, it was not what Sony was hoping. It did not do as well as the worst Raimi film.
Right.
So that was a problem.
Do you think, aside from the aesthetics and the acting and this and that, you think it was just too soon? I mean, my whole thing was it was just too soon. We just got over this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was too soon. But as we made the point of saying, they had no choice.
Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. But they could have done something else. They could have, just sort of continued the story with different performers. Maybe not exactly a sequel to Raimi stuff, but like the Ed Norton Hulk, just kind of like, okay, he's already Spider-Man and this is what's going on.
Right.
So again, I believe The Amazing Spider-Man came out the same year as Avengers, and it was destroyed by the Avengers, and it was just maybe made 200 million and change. I want to say maybe like 220, 230, which sounds like a lot of money, but it's not. We've heard how all these movies like Superman Returns and stuff make $200 million and they're considered failures.
That's amazing.
So they weren't pleased with the performance, but I guess they figured, well, we're going to keep on this track. They hurried a sequel into production, which was Amazing Spider-Man 2. They cast Jamie Foxx as Electro, and they had Dean DeHaan as Green Goblin, and they just completely mangled the Green Goblin character. And the Electro character was probably worse than any Joel Schumacher Batman villain.
That's exactly what it felt like. It felt like Jim Carrey and
awful
and Schwarzenegger combined into one.
It was horrific. And the movie sucked. I mean, I thought it was terrible. It underperformed. It didn't even come close to the first Garfield Spider-Man.
Right.
So, Sony, prior to the release of the film, had announced all these ambitious plans.
Well, they were doubling down immediately with more sequels and the Sinister Six and this and that. And
well, because here's the thing, once Fox and Sony saw how successful Marvel was at creating a cohesive, integrated universe,
of course,
with Avengers, they were like, well, how do we do this? Now, Fox at least has the rights they can sort of do that because they have so many X-Men characters. I mean, their rights, they have all the mutants. They have all the mutants. They can do Wolverine movies. They can do X-Factor movies. They can do X-Force movies. They can do whatever the hell they want. And they also have the rights to the Fantastic Four. So, I mean, I don't know how that's ever going to work if they ever decide to sort of team them up, but they have more than Sony. All Sony has is Spider-Man. So Sony is saying, well, we can create all these different movies based on Spider-Man's supporting characters.
Yep.
That's a mistake because these are all characters who are not meant to carry their own films. But again, they see dollar signs. They see how well Marvel pulled it off. And they were like, we can do that. We can do that. Well, Spider-Man 2 comes out. It's a bomb. For all intents and purposes, it's a bomb. As you said, they had made all these, doubled down and said, well, okay, now Spider-Man 3 is going to come out this time and Sinister Six is this time. Well, no. Then they take a step back and they delay Spider-Man 3. They're like, okay, we're going to push this back to like 2018. And Sinister Six, well, we're still going to do it. We're going to do Venom. We're going to do an Aunt May movie. I mean, when they leaked those Sony memos, I mean, some of the ideas that they were coming up with.
Let's take a little break here. And isn't that the point that you first, as far as I'm concerned, that's the first time I've ever heard of anybody seriously considering the idea of trying something?
I think that there had been leaks, there had been rumblings prior to the leaked memos, but no one was giving it any credibility. Actually, the first time I heard anything was when Kevin Feige did that Phase 3 announcement in California. Somebody brought it up to him, and he said, if it was happening, I would have talked about it now. But he said the same thing when they asked him about Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. So these things get out, but he couldn't talk about it then because he didn't have the signed contracts. So when the leaked memos and emails came out, you were like, holy shit, they're thinking about doing this, because they realize that they're sort of screwed. Like, they're either going to lose, they're going to make these shitty movies that no one is happy with, and it's not going to be the moneymaker that it once was, or you can partner up with Marvel and sort of ride their coattails and make a lot of money.
Well, even though we don't know exactly what they're going to do in terms of, script, we don't know exactly which direction they're going to go. We at least have a good idea where they're not going to go. So what happens to these plans that we just talked about of Spider-Man 3 and Sinister 6? What happens to all that stuff?
Well, aside from, I don't know that Sinister 6 has been officially canceled, but just wait and see. I think that's inevitable. Spider-Man 3 is off the table. Andrew Garfield is no longer Spider-Man. Marvel, as you said in the beginning, is now... Sony still has the rights to the character. They have entered into this agreement. See, here's the thing. When all the questions started being asked when Marvel announced that the next Captain America film was going to be Civil War, because everybody knows who read the comic that Civil War hinges on Spider-Man. He is like the main character who's being pulled by Iron Man in one direction and Captain America in the other.
Oh, so you're thinking that just the fact that they told us Civil War was the title and that's the storyline, you think they already knew that at that point, that there was a done deal?
I think there was a plan A and a plan B.
Really?
I think plan A was we get Spider-Man. Plan B is we figure out how to do this story without him. Now, Marvel, I'm sure they are nothing if not, smart and efficient planners, and they were prepared to not have Spider-Man. But it worked out. And everybody was saying, okay, like, how are we going to do this without Spider-Man? And then Marvel's like, we'll figure it out. And of course, everybody has faith in Marvel because, Marvel hasn't f***ed up yet. So they were like, okay, but it lent so much more credibility to the notion or the rumor that they would, enter into some kind of agreement with Sony, and Sony having their backs to the wall, not being successful with their last film. It was a much more sort of agreeable to this kind of situation. And that's what happened.
Now, what do we officially know so far? The fact that Spider-Man will make an appearance at a Marvel film, do we know if there's any, is that going to happen in reverse also? Are we going to see Marvel characters in a Sony film?
No, not that I've heard. They haven't announced that Spider-Man's going to be in Civil War, but they say he'll appear in a Marvel film. If it's not Civil War, I'd be, flabbergasted. Then Marvel had their Phase 3 plans that they've sort of altered a bit to put in a Spider-Man film, I believe, in 2017.
Oh, my goodness.
So you'll have him most likely in Civil War, and then his own film, and then, we'll see how it goes from there. This could be a very lucrative situation for Sony. Everyone is expecting that he'll be in the Avengers Infinity War films, so
especially since it's a two-parter, they have plenty of time to write him in.
I think it's a little bit, I don't want to say a rush job to put him into Civil War, because as I said, I honestly believe that there's a sort of there was plan A and plan B. So I really don't think that that's going to be a problem. And it still hasn't started shooting. I know these things are planned well in advance, but it's, I think it starts filming maybe next month.
Of course, if you were running Marvel and if you had, all your wishes come true, other than a full-blown Spider-Man outfit that you would want for yourself, what would you want them to do with the character? And do you have any casting, wish lists or anything like that you would want?
Well, honestly, I'm not as in tune with these younger actors as I was, back in the Tobey Maguire days, like when the different actors were floated. There was Tobey Maguire, there was Jake Gyllenhaal. I knew who these people were, but now the names that I'm seeing being put forth as potentials, because I know they want to go young. I don't know who the hell any of these people are. So, I hate to say
Half of them are British usually.
Well, yeah, and then that's not usually a bad thing. But I couldn't tell you. I've read the different casting notes, I don't know who any of these guys are, but I'm going to say this, and I hope that, people don't think I'm a racist, but I have to address this. I don't want, there's the Ultimate Spider-Man character who was created maybe 10 years ago. There's a character named Miles Morales who I guess I don't know really anything about the Ultimate Marvel characters, but he took over from Peter Parker at a certain point. I want Peter Parker. I'm sorry. If Marvel finally has the rights to do Spider-Man, then I want it to be Peter. Not this character that hasn't been around for 10 minutes. I want it to be the classic, the traditional Peter Parker. I don't give a shit about, diversity and this, that, and the other thing. It's fine.
What if it's a girl?
I want it to be him.
Traditional, classic Peter Parker.
Exactly. And that's really my only bone of contention. You cast whoever you want as long as it's Peter. That's my issue. And I think the internet has been stirring the pot to get a ethnic character.
Do you think they're trial balloons just to see what the reaction is?
I think they're trying to make this happen, to try to will this to happen. But I would just eat my hat if Kevin Feige makes someone other than Peter be Spider-Man.
You must have plenty of hats, because I remember you promised you were going to eat your hat if they made a Sinister Six movie. So,
well, it still hasn't happened.
Let's see what happens with that before you start eating a second hat.
I don't think that's going to happen. But so, however you slice it, this is good news for Marvel and the fans and Sony. They were really, they were not in a good position. Fox is the only studio that's in sort of a good position, and Marvel is making them suffer because the fact that their movies, at least their X-Men movies, are successful, Marvel is giving them absolutely no support.
Yeah.
No action figures, no comics, nothing. They're really being spiteful. So, but
now, if this is successful, do you think that means that Fox might try a little swappage?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say because their last movie, Days of Future Past,
they're already using some of the same characters.
It's a sort of, again, with these rights issues, they have a sort of, it only applies to Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. That's the only two characters that Marvel and Fox sort of share rights to. Right. No one else. Fox can't use anybody else. Marvel can't use anybody else. So I think that for the time being, they have X-Men Apocalypse coming out. There's no one that thinks that that's going to be a bomb. And then you have the third Wolverine film coming out, which again, the second one was a hit and it was very well done. So as much as I think Hugh Jackman would love to see it, I don't think the Fox executives will ever let it happen.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you another question. Since we're tippy-toeing into this whole world of sharing and collaborating in terms of being able to use these characters, let's talk total blasphemy here. What are the odds that we might one day see DC and Marvel share or do the same thing?
Well, DC, the short answer is never. DC is building their cinematic universe now, and it remains to be seen whether or not it'll be successful. I hope it'll be successful only because, the more the merrier. I could have 10 superhero films a year and be happy. But, you don't want the whole genre to eat itself. But I think that if DC and Warner Brothers get their act together, then you just have competition for Marvel. And if anybody's going to suffer, I think it would be somebody like Fox, who has really very little share of that marketplace. But I think DC, it would have to be like 20 years from now. Wow. And they'd be so desperate, it'd be like, a Universal horror film with all the monsters in it, I think that's, Aliens versus Predator time.
Well, have they ever tried it on the comic book level?
No, the comics have done it. And,
they've danced together a little bit?
Yeah, many times. Some have been good, some have been not so good, and you're always excited when it happens. But you really don't think that it's going to happen in the films. Well,
but I mean, like you always say, we always come down to this point: the more, the better. Nothing but good things could only come out of this. More films, hopefully, like you said, they don't eat each other up. They don't oversaturate the market. But it's definitely something that the average person who might not even care anymore that there's more Spider-Man films, especially after the Garfield ones, they, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's interesting. That's new. I would be interested in seeing what happens if Spider-Man meets the Avengers. That would be interesting.
Right.
So I guess it's an all-win situation.
For the audience, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the budgets, I'm sure, are going to go through the roof.
Well, Marvel is doing so well, that I don't think they're worried about, financial elements coming into play or, I think that the next Avengers film is going to be monstrous, more than the first one. Mm-hmm. I think the Captain America film is going to be huge because you have Iron Man in it. You have Robert Downey in it. And if Spider-Man is in it, it's going to make like at least $300 million, I would say.
Wow.
And then, you just go from there. Marvel, they're now on the C list with their Phase 3 characters. And I have no doubt that they will be successful. To what degree, I'm not sure, but it's the Marvel brand.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy proved it's the brand. Mm-hmm. That's, okay, want to do the Inhumans? Nobody knows who the hell they are? Let's do it.
And you don't see that anymore. You don't go to a movie and see the Fox logo or the Universal logo and say, oh my God, it's a Fox movie. I can't wait to see it. Nobody cares what it is except for Disney might have a little clout, but Marvel, no kidding. They're the same company now in a way. But you see those logos and you know that you're in a safe place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And don't forget, the fact that Marvel did not have the rights to X-Men, to Spider-Man, to Fantastic Four, that's the reason you see all these characters like the Black Panther, like Doctor Strange, like Thor even.
It forced them to mine.
It forced them to mine what they had.
Yeah.
Now they're going to reap the benefits. They're getting Spider-Man back.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they don't have X-Men, maybe they don't have FF. Who cares? Right now, it's a who cares kind of situation. They don't need them. They have hundreds and thousands of characters to use in movies and television. Look at their Netflix. Their Daredevil is coming out in April.
Boy. Yeah.
And then you have 3 more shows after that.
That's right.
So
that's right.
It's the brand.
Okay. So, well, it looks like we're in good hands. And, somewhere in the near future, you guys are also going to get an Avengers commentary from us.
Yep.
And I want to thank Steve for once again joining me and give him, basically school. What he does, he schools me on this stuff because I'm not the biggest comic book fan. But when it comes to movies, I love these movies. Mm-hmm. And at least he can fill in all those little gaps of where did this come from? Where did this come from? Why is this guy here? Who owns them? That kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So on behalf of everybody here at GeekFest Rants, thank you for joining us and we'll see you soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Let's go! ビルの谷間の暗闇にキラリと光る光の目安らぎ捨てて全てを捨てて悪を追って命が惜しかったらどけ Change me apart 君はなぜ君はなぜ戦い続けるのか命をかけて一筋に無敵の男スパイダーマン
And I hope that, people don't think I'm a racist, but...
Oh, is all you do is read comic books?
I don't give a shit about, diversity and this, that, and the other thing.